Now we're going to go to some breaking news that broke last night and early this morning. Last night we learned that Mauricio Pochettino had been sacked as head coach by Tottenham Hotspur. He took them to the Champions League final last year and is generally believed to have done a very good job there. But they're 14th in the Premier League and they haven't won away from home since January, and they have a number of discontented players. And Daniel Levy, the chief executive of Tottenham, outlined those reasons why Pochettino should go. And at 6:30 this morning it was announced that Jose Mourinho would be the new Spurs manager, and we're joined now by John Giles to talk about this. John, for a long time now you've been saying Pochettino was living on the edge, and I think you felt he should have left at the end of last season. But of course he signed a 5-year contract, a new contract, last spring, and his payoff will be £12.5 million. So if he'd have walked, he wouldn't have got the payoff. So that makes sense. What do you make of what we've seen?
Well, I think it's sensible, Eamon, in a business way to get the payment that he got.
Yeah,
I think for his career at the time and now hasn't been a good move, Eamon. He has been sacked after all, and I think, Mr. Levy can say what he likes, but Mr. Levy has to take an awful lot of responsibility for the position that Spurs are in, and therefore sacking him. So he has to be right because he's the boss. But Pochettino, as we know, has done a really, really good job for a number of years now. And it was a telling statement that he made at the start of the season after a meeting with Mr. Levy and a couple of other people, that he said, I no longer want to be the manager.
Yeah,
I'll be the coach, which meant that he wasn't getting the conditions that he wanted at the club to take him further. In other words, in charge of the coming and going of players.
Yes,
and the responsibility of being in the situation where at least 4 other players, Eamon, as we know, have their contracts running out or in dispute with the club, mainly through Mr. Levy and not Pochettino.
Absolutely.
So Pochettino is paying the price for some of the things that Levy has done. He's the boss, and I think it's a bad move for Spurs. I think he's been a terrific manager, Pochettino has, and Mr. Levy is the one that is responsible, I think, for the position that Spurs are in at the moment.
Yes, and we should say that last week the Tottenham first team squad took Pochettino out to dinner in a public declaration of how high a regard they have for him. Harry Kane has been out already this morning saying he wouldn't be the player he is if it weren't for Pochettino, and there are other people like Dele Alli, Harry Winks and players like that who have definitely prospered with this coach Pochettino. And of course there's then the discontented players. That's not the coach's fault. Alderweireld, Eriksen, very notably, Vertonghen and Danny Rose. They're all letting their contracts run out and can walk away from the club. In Eriksen's case, he can begin negotiating in January. So can Alderweireld. So it's the club policy on players' remuneration, really. And Harry Kane was a victim of it for a very long time as well. That's at the core of, it's said in one English paper I read this morning that he'd lost the dressing room, but I think the person who's lost the dressing room is Daniel Levy.
Yeah, well, he lost the head, and he's lost the manager. Yeah, Levy, because he's the boss, and obviously he believes what he's doing is correct. I think man loads and I think thousands and thousands of Spurs supporters won't feel the same. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation to ask the manager to get the best out of players whose contracts, as you quite rightly said there, are running out.
Yeah,
you can't have a team spirit. You can't. I mean, in football, it's hard enough to win trophies when everybody's together. But when you get a situation that Pochettino's in, and it's not to his doing, that there's got 4 or 5 players who are looking elsewhere, and they have to be when the contract is running out. Levy has done that. It's not Pochettino has done that. I don't think he had any say in it.
No.
And again, I'd go back to the point he made at the start of the season. I don't want to be known as the manager, because what he was saying was the decisions you are making are not my decisions.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'll pay the price, which is right about. And I, in other words, it's not in my hands. What the moves you're making, I don't agree with. It's not in the best interest of the club, in my opinion. But if we're not winning matches, then I'm going to take the responsibility. I'm going to have to take the responsibility for it, which has been the case. But Levy's in a very strong position, because he's saying now, well, you're not doing so well, so we get a new manager in.
Yeah.
So it's not. In other words, I'm washing my hands of it. It's nothing to do with me, but it's got everything to do with him.
Of course. Now, Pochettino won't be short of work for long. You suggested months ago, actually, that he should be at Manchester United. He'd be a perfect coach for that situation. Yep. And Real Madrid may also be looking for a new coach, and he's been linked with that job as well. Even as we speak, the connections are being made. What do you make of Mourinho going to Tottenham, particularly one of the sort of qualities that Pochettino has had is the introduction of young players, the nurturing of young players like Harry Kane, like Harry Winks, Dele Alli, although I know he's up and down with his form. But there are a lot of good players have come through, and Mourinho is not known for bringing players through. What he is known for, John, is working with ready-made players. And of course, he'll also have to face the fact that there's a lot of discontent in the dressing room, and 4 of the top players are about to walk in a few months' time.
Yeah, I think one thing is as you say, then, not noted for bringing young players on. What he has been noted for, very, very, very strongly in his career, has been in charge of the situation.
Yeah.
The ingoings and outgoings of players, and that's when he was winning trophies. And what happened to Chelsea when the owner came in and said, "I want this guy and I want that guy," it went upside down.
Yeah.
But I've always admired him, for being in control of the situation, getting the players in that he wanted, and getting rid of the players that he didn't want. I think that came crashing down with the Pogba situation. I don't think he was in charge of that, but that's another day's work. And then it fell to bits at Manchester United. Now, going into Spurs seems to be the total opposite of what he's always demanded going into a club, that he would be in charge of the situation. Actually, it's the reason Pochettino is leaving or has been sacked, that he's walking into the same situation that Pochettino had. So that's the first for him, in my opinion, Eamon. So I don't see a great partnership there.
No,
between him and Levy.
And the fact is, John, that Mourinho has really run out of places to go. He's a big coach. There are only so many big clubs, but he's burned bridges with Real Madrid, although there was talk of him going back there. He had a pretty torrid relationship with that club and some of its players. Chelsea out of the question. And there are only so many big clubs. I think he's been reduced to being a television pundit, which, as we know, John, is the lowest form of football life. So he's had to go on Sky.
It's been on for years, I believe that.
He's had to go on Sky.
It's a difficult situation. Yeah, I agree with you. There's not many big jobs around him, and I think he's in a situation now where he has to take this particular job. But unfortunately, he was in a position at one time to win on his terms.
Oh, absolutely.
Which was to be in charge of this, in charge of that, and that's where his great years. That's when he had his great years. Now he's gone into a situation where Pochettino has done a remarkable job there. With the resources that he had when building a new stadium and all the various things, and he's been sacked by Levy because he hasn't had the situations and conditions that Mourinho always demanded. Now Mourinho has taken on that situation now, because he has to, as you say. There aren't that many big clubs around, so I'd see a very, very difficult situation for Mourinho. In the relationship that he's going to have with Levy.
Yeah, I mean, for example, now, top 4 and getting in the Champions League which Pochettino managed despite all the difficulties of the job he was trying to do. It has huge financial implications. Tottenham have huge financial obligations with their new stadium. Not getting in the Champions League could cost anything, well, maybe up to 80, 100 million if you get to the final. So there would be an irony now, John, and it's sometimes happened in football in the past, if Levy decided to open his checkbook and say to Mourinho, go and get us a couple of players.
Yeah. Well, that could happen, Eamon. I don't think it will.
No, I don't.
I mean, to be fair, like, if you look at the Pochettino situation, like, he earned his corn, Eamon. He did his stuff.
Oh, he did,
and
yeah.
I think the manager should have embraced him and said, look, okay, what do you want from now? Who do you want? What do you want? It hasn't happened. He's been discontented, as we know, since the Champions League, because he hasn't got what he wanted. I think there's a couple of guys in there with Levy who were very influential in the buying and selling of players, which was taken away from Pochettino. Haven't earned what I can understand. Some chairman, Eamon, when somebody comes in new and they're a bit wary of what they want in the transfer market and they restrict them a bit. But having Pochettino having done what he's done, I think should have been embraced. He hasn't been, and I don't see any reason now why he would embrace Mourinho.
No,
but Mourinho, as you say, is in a position now where he's pretty desperate for the job, and he has to take the conditions that he would never have taken 5 or 6 years ago.
No, and it might be the case, John, and I think it probably will be, that everything that Pochettino built up to get Spurs to where they are could be lost now, because if they lose Eriksen and Alderweireld, Danny Rose and Vertonghen, all of whom can walk and are consciously running down their contracts, that's the end of that team, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but that's what Levy's created that. I mean,
I know he has.
That Pochettino, as manager, would have wanted to get these things sorted out with the club, and he hasn't been allowed to do it. And what he said at the start of the season, I keep going back to this. I'm not the manager anymore, because I think there were meetings in the summer where he wanted certain players in, but because of the board and Levy had 2 guys in, didn't get what he wanted. And that's totally, I mean, having done what he did with the players that he had, I think he would have got the contract situation sorted out and get a couple of new players in. I mean, they paid 70 million, didn't they, for it? I can't think of his name, Eamon, at the moment. Now, I would doubt very much if Pochettino wanted him. I'd say he wanted a couple of other players, but wasn't allowed to do it. That's when he said, I forget it, I'm not the manager anymore, I'm only the coach. So, in other words, if you get players in that don't do well, I'll have to take the responsibility for it, although they weren't my players. So I think Levy left him in an impossible position, Eamon. And then the results weren't good because it goes through the club, and then he sacks Pochettino for not getting the results that he was responsible for the team not getting. Now,
this is a fact of football life today, John. There aren't many clubs now that don't have a director of football. There aren't many clubs, if any, who give the coach, I'd say Guardiola would be one exception, who give the coach carte blanche to do whatever he wants, to sign whoever he wants, to negotiate the wages and all of that. So what Daniel Levy has done or is doing at Spurs is a kind of, it's taking away power from the coach for himself to make judgment calls about salaries and who to bring in and that he's not equipped to make. So there's only one way for Spurs.
He's great at the business end of it, Eamon. But and I can understand, I know exactly what you're saying, and a lot of chairmen and clubs are very, very wary, particularly if they get a new manager in and he wants to spend an awful lot of money. And that's understandable. But when you have Pochettino, who's been there for 4 or 5 years and has done a remarkable job, without spending a lot of money, I mean, you have to trust him then to do what needs to be done. But if Levi is letting players run out, which is madness even from the outside, to let players like Vertonghen and Alderweireld and these guys run out of contract, I mean, he's allowed it to happen. It's not as if Pochettino was asking for an awful lot. I mean, all he's asking is, look, the players that I have, and they've been proven to be good players, I've proven to be a good manager, come to terms with them. You know that it's a bad move, and it's bad management, in my opinion, for Spurs. I understand what you're saying. That say a new manager comes in, it's very, very difficult for him to say, well, I want to spend 100 million in this and 100 that, and he hasn't proven himself. Whereas Pochettino's done it for 5 years.
Yes.
On a shoestring, as we say, Eamon. He really, really has proven himself. So he should have been embraced by the manager or by Levi to say, okay, you've done a great job. What do you want to do next? I'll go along with what you want to do.
I think
it hasn't happened. He's gone the opposite way, and now he's sacking him for things not being right at the club.
I think the big winner here is Pochettino, John. I think they'll get a very good job with a top club, and it'll be fascinating, nevertheless, to see how Jose Mourinho deals with this situation and how long the honeymoon lasts between him and Daniel Levy, and before he's back.
Long, Eamon.
Before he's back working for Sky.
Yeah, I don't think you enjoy that. The big thing now, Eamon, the big talking point now is what will Manchester United do?
Yep, that's right.
Will they go for him?
I think they might.
I'm only give you my opinion. I'd go for him today.
Okay, John. Thank you very much indeed for that. And I think somebody's going to go for him pretty quickly because he's proved to be a coach with rare qualities. And actually, in passing, I think we both agree about this, in his dealings with the media and that, a seriously nice man.
Well, he's a good lad, Eamon.
Mm.
You know, he's proven himself. He's done a great job under very difficult circumstances. Couldn't have done any more. What was asked of him, couldn't have done any better.
Right.
And I feel really sorry for him to be in this situation, sacked for something that happened, or a lot of things that happened that he hasn't been responsible for.
He's walking away with
dreadful.
He's walking away with a £12 million pound sterling check, John.
Yeah, I understand that, Eamon, but I don't think it's a money thing with Pochettino.
No, I know that.
I think he's a career man.
Yeah.
And if things went well, Eamon, and he was treated the way he should be treated, he should be getting 12 million or more from Spurs for the next 3 or 4 years.
Okay, John. Thank you very much indeed. That's John Giles. I'd like to thank John, as always, for his wisdom, and I kind of has been predicting this for some time, and also predicting for Manchester United fans that Mauricio Pochettino may end up at Old Trafford. I think he might go to Real Madrid, but we'll see.